The best thing you can do, whether you're a corporate leader or an individual, I think, is embrace it as much as you can, as fast as you can. Push your own envelopes, learn as much as you can, as fast as you can. Be innovative in your approach, fail fast, but don't stand still, because the rest of the world's only going faster and the technology's going faster still.
Despite huge investments in technology and even higher expectations, research is showing that upwards of 70% of organizations are struggling to realize value from their AI initiatives. But why is that? And what can we do about it? Welcome to this episode of Facing Disruption's Future Up. I'm AJ Bubb, and today we're tackling why enterprise AI adoption so often falls short and how leaders can actually drive results. We'll be joined by Jeff Sawyer, Managing Director of Digital and AI Transformation at Boston Consulting Group. And he's here to discuss these challenges and explore practical insights to help leaders move beyond the hype. Jeff brings deep experience guiding Fortune 500s through the transformation journey and focuses heavily on consumer industries, especially retail, travel and hospitality, and media and entertainment. Let's dive in. We came on today to talk about AI adoption in enterprises and the life cycle and evolution of that, where we are today, what we're seeing in the marketplace. And I wanted to quickly allow you to introduce yourself. Jeff, we've worked together. I was thinking about it's been 10 years, maybe a little bit less, 8 years when we started. Worked together at Accenture. You were part of digital mobility, did a lot of really exciting work around IoT and the cruise industry and hospitality. Take a second, introduce yourself. And
thank you, AJ. Yeah, I think it has been 10 years, and what a decade it has been. My name's Jeff Sawyer. AJ is a good friend. It's fantastic to be on here with you today. So thank you so much for inviting me. I am, well, at least for the last 12 plus years, I've been a consultant, but over the course of my career, I've spent about half my time in consulting and about another half in corporate roles. Great things about both. But currently, and for the last 12 years, I've been in consulting. First at Accenture, where you and I met. And of course, for the last 3 years, I've been a managing director at Boston Consulting Group. Based in Atlanta, I do digital strategy, digital solutions, and digital transformation. And of course, in the last 3 years, that's been heavily focused on data and AI, and helping large enterprises, for the most part, figure out what's going on, what's real, what do they need to focus on, how do they prioritize, and frequently being asked to predict the future, which is a thing. If it was ever not a fool's errand, it certainly sometimes seems like it is definitely now.
Yeah, predicting the future. I mean, everything will happen. We just have to say yes. Is it possible? Yes. And if it's not possible today, it's going to be possible in 3 months? Now, who knows? But that doesn't necessarily translate into something usable.
Or profitable.
Or profitable, especially. Yeah. So, let's take a quick step back. I always like to start with the overarching problem space and challenge set. And in this case, we're focusing on AI adoption in enterprise in the transformation journey. And when we prepped for it, you had a really great way of thinking about it in these 3 phases: the early phase, middle phase, 2023, and then 2024, where we are. So let's get into a little bit of that background.
Sure. So I think, it's still shocking to think about that we've really only been, at least in a sort of a mass market sense, talking about AI for just over 2 years. Now, of course, as anybody that is knowledgeable about the space will tell you, AI is not a new topic or a new technology. It's it's at least it goes back to the 40s or maybe 50s, the beginning of machine learning. But with the launch of the commercial availability of ChatGPT, I think it was when most people started paying attention, including most of my clients. And, it was about a year ago or 2 years ago, maybe a little more, when everybody started calling. And I imagine lots of consultants experience this, all the clients calling, asking, what does it mean? Is it real? What are the impacts to my company, to my team, to our industry? And so we spent, 2023 to me was a lot of those kinds of discussions. In some cases, those were really interesting projects, strategy-oriented projects, helping large clients assess, their business, their current plan, and what this technology is enabling them to do now and in the future, and how they might respond to it. So that was a lot of 2023, but not, I wouldn't say much, actually doing or building. Some experimentation, but a lot of questioning and debating and thinking about what it means and what might I do about it. But as we got into 2024, I think to me that there was a shift towards much more towards doing. And I most clients at this point had, accepted that this was real. It wasn't something that was going away. And it was something that was going to impact their business. And if they didn't, pursue it, invest in it, and build skills in it, they were likely to find themselves at a competitive advantage or disadvantage. And so in 2024, we began to see a lot more of clients, of companies actually working to get to at-scale solutions. Now, my experience with sort of what was going on in the macro environment in 2024, the early movers definitely were focused on efficiency use cases. How could they use this technology to take cost out of the business? Now, I always thought that was, of course, that's important, right? Being efficient in what we do. And of course, AI as a technology is absolutely going to help many people and many companies and many processes become more efficient. So nothing against that, but it certainly seemed limiting and as a singular focus on use cases and strategies. But that's what we saw a lot, I think, in 2024. By the end of 2024, I think you had a lot of senior leaders that were sort of disappointed that hadn't really seen all these savings magically appear. And in my thinking, there's possibly a few reasons for that. One is just the maybe the eagerness with which some pursued solutions without actually defining what they were trying to accomplish. I think another is a fairly consistent failure to think about change management. At BCG, one of the frameworks we use, we call it 10-20-70, where the 10 talking about the effort to achieve true transformation and value from AI. The 10, in terms of effort, 10% of the effort is related to the technology itself, technology and data, and 20% is sort of the algorithm. You can think of it as how you deploy the technology, but 70% of the effort comes from change management. And I think that's especially true when you're talking about large enterprises and efficiency-based use cases, because at the end of the day, to accomplish the goal, to achieve efficiency savings, you have to embrace change. Changing how you currently work, how your organization currently runs. And I think in 2024, many clients charged off down this path of, okay, I believe it. Let's get it, let's build something at scale. And they focused, on the 10 or maybe the 10 and the 20, but never really bothered to focus on the 70. And absent that, I think you're highly unlikely to have a successful outcome in terms of big dollar saving.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack in what you just said. And let's start with that point. This has been a recurring theme in all of the conversations that I've had so far, which is when you lead with the technology solution, it's very easy to lose sight of what you're actually trying to solve for, what those challenges are. And then you also tend to miss the adoption side of the curve. So you build a thing without appreciating where that thing fits into a process, and then the humans that need to actually get their job done with this new tool.
Yeah.
And then things go sideways because it's like, hey, why didn't this technology? And I feel like that's how the conversation is presented. Why hasn't this technology achieved the efficiency we were promised? And just there, that statement has so many fallacies within it. The technology did not come in to achieve the value. The technology was part of the solution to a challenge in a workflow, in a process, in a thing that had to get done. And the team just missed the mark on defining what that problem was.
Well, they didn't dedicate the time and effort to think about it. And that what's the Einstein? I think it's the Einstein quote. You have a problem to solve. He'd take, and I'm obviously paraphrasing. If you had an hour to solve a problem, take 50 minutes or 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. Yeah. I think too often what we see in enterprises, especially when you're talking about a bright, new, shiny, exciting technology, is you spend all the time focused on the solution. And by the time you get the solution deployed, either the one you built doesn't necessarily solve the problem, or you never even define the problem.
Exactly.
Solution and the value attached to solving the problem in the first place.
I wrote about this. I called it the silver bullet syndrome. And we experienced this as we were working together. Especially, I remember IoT. IoT was going to come and save the world. And we would go in and essentially be asked for, give me the box of IoT. Put it on the desk. How much does it cost to give me IoT? It's like, okay, well, that completely misses the mark of what this is. And then later, when we got into AR and VR, and we're getting into changing the way that inspections were done or assembly, equipping the manufacturing floor with these virtualized instructions, everybody was saying, give me AR, give me VR, do it. And so we'd sit down and ask, okay, so where are your instruction sets and diagrams? Oh, we have it in a locker over there in paper. Okay, that doesn't help. Like, your problem wasn't that your workers didn't have the instructions. The problem was you didn't have the instructions. Yeah. Right? So everybody's using technology as a silver bullet. Give me AI. AI is going to solve my problem right now.
Yeah. Well, it's a hard time to be a senior leader, to be a CEO of a major enterprise. I imagine you've got shareholders, you've got boards, probably constantly wanting to know, customers wanting to know, and constantly asking you, what are you doing about what AI stuff are you doing, and when are we going to see some cool AI stuff? And so there's I think a lot of pressure to be to easily distract leaders from the hard work of running and much less transforming a business. Because of the bright, shiny thing. Every day there's some new bright, shiny thing that can easily distract you from the hard work.
And I think that's one of the big differences of what we're seeing today with AI and the speed that new features and functionality is coming out versus my examples with IoT and immersive reality, is that today, it just seems like every week there's a completely new use case that AI has come in and said, I could do this better, faster, cheaper.
Yeah.
We were talking about before we started recording the commercial that you sent over that was made with VO3, and it looks great. It's what was it? It was,
I forget the name of the city, but it was a city in Brazil that used VO3. VO3 is Google's latest version of their video AI, generative AI solution. It does video, soundtrack, speech, music, and this was a 1 minute long commercial that this city, I think it was like the Chamber of Commerce or the Tourist Bureau or whatever for this city in Brazil created with VO3. And it's extremely well done. I mean, it's very high quality. It's entertaining. It's in Portuguese, by the way. But I thought besides the quality, I thought the most amazing part of it was that they said it cost them $52 in credits to Google to create the 1 minute video, and that normally the budget for them to build that would have been $18,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you think about this. I imagining it's a small kind of a nonprofit organization. Struggling with budgets and trying to promote their city, and here's this solution now that lets them save, turn an $18,000 expense into a $52 expense. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that leads back to what you were saying about the early adopters and the early use cases being more around efficiency gains. And not only do we have the challenge of, and I would love to get into a little bit deeper around those efficiency gain use cases, but also now the shift towards growth use cases. And this is where, at least, not just at least for me, for everybody, I'm sure, the potential to grow in so many different ways seems so much easier now that not only do we have the distraction of how are we implementing AI into our current business models in the markets that we're in, but how can we accelerate growth into brand new markets and do this thing that, we just happen to have the talent that can move to an adjacent sphere and do this new thing. And now all of a sudden we're getting into businesses that aren't part of our core strategy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the focus on efficiency is an important one, right? Every corporate leader needs to be focused on their cost structure and how to be more efficient in terms of what they do. But we already talked about one of the hurdles to achieving success with efficiency solutions, right? The change management piece. I think there are another dynamic to keep in mind there is that this topic is moving so fast that failure to take sort of a portfolio approach to organizational change and transformation is risky. Just like, as an investor, putting all your eggs in one basket is risky, right? As a corporate leader, I think thinking in terms of a portfolio approach to technology and transformation is a wise approach. And so if you just focus on, if you just say, we're going to focus on efficiency use cases, you're limiting your portfolio in a way. And I say, it also might be the case that change management as a challenge is more significant when it comes to those efficiency use cases, because you're dealing with the momentum of the bureaucracy, the current way of doing things. And so even if you, defined a great use case, a powerful one, and set a goal and figured out how to measure it when it came to efficiency use cases, and actually did the hard work of change management, that alone might not create any kind of sustained competitive advantage. I mean, it's a topic that every one of your competitors is focused on as well. You should be focused on it. But is it going to allow you to change the game? to really create sustained competitive advantage because you got more efficient in your operations? Not by itself. No. I mean, what it can do is enable you to fund the journey to the capabilities and use cases that are about growth, both growth in terms of your current markets and products, your current revenue, but also, to your point, into entirely new markets and adjacent sectors and new product lines. It's also, I think, the growth use cases are less sort of limited by the change management associated with the current way of doing things, the current organization and business process. So maybe you're more likely to achieve success with growth use cases from AI just because you don't have quite the change management, not that there's none, but maybe you don't have quite the change management hurdle to get over.
Yeah, it makes me think of top-down versus bottom-up innovation or transformation, where the bottoms-up is you're changing the culture, the systems, the infrastructure to get to a point where you can innovate faster, versus top-down is I'm going to lead with the innovation. You see these innovation groups spun off out of organizations into their own tiger team, and they say, hey, go do this thing with this new technology or this problem, and they're not held back by any of the legacy organization, right? And I think there's a mix of both of them, but there's so many things that you need to start to consider. Is one, how much friction is holding back your ability to innovate? Two, focusing on the bottom, you can never really get to zero or past it. Like efficiency gains, are they going to turn into new revenue, or like you're always going to have some sort of operational cost, right?
Efficiency focus is the downside is capped. I mean, you can only reduce your costs so far.
Yeah.
Growth use cases, however, are at least theoretically unlimited, right? So, but doing both together, I think just is the right approach from a portfolio standpoint. It's also it's definitely the case that the solutions and the capabilities that you need to build as a corporate leader to do both have success both in efficiency as well as growth solutions. But technology involved, the data, the infrastructure, the learnings and capabilities of your team is actually common in many cases. And so, if you're just focused on one, like just efficiency, you're potentially missing out on a greater leverage point. I mean, why would you not try to, put in place the technology, the data, the solutions you need that can solve for multiple things, efficiency and growth.
Yeah. So you need a strong mix. I like the portfolio approach. So you have some of those efficiency use cases, some of those growth use cases, probably some low-hanging fruit so that you can go to market and say, like, look, or at least your board and say, this is what we're doing in AI, and answer those questions in a meaningful way and not just say you've missed the boat. So you have to have, like, is there a golden ratio of that you see? Some are better than others?
I think by golden ratio, you mean there's like one correct answer that everybody should keep in mind?
Yeah,
no.
like 20% efficiency, 50% growth.
No, I think this is where a portfolio approach in terms of efficiency and growth, but also in terms of smaller, tactical, low-hanging fruit, like you're not a huge payoff, but it's a low cost type of an effort versus some on the other end of the spectrum that are big bet, that maybe they're kind of expensive, they're unlikely to pay off, but if it did, it would be, it'd be powerful. I think that is a dimension to the portfolio approach that's important too. I don't think there's any golden percentage or mix, but figuring out what the right one is for you as an enterprise, given your context, given your business strategy, given your current competitive posture and where you're trying to head, that to me is how your digital strategy, your AI strategy supports and aligns with your corporate strategy.
Yeah. And I want to tie that back also to the cultural element of it, because now, we're focusing again on the importance of an organization's ability to experiment.
Yeah.
Right. And you've said experiment a couple times. I'm all about experimentation. So now, with the example I was giving earlier while we were talking about my pipeline of approvals just becoming almost untamable because it's moving so fast, right? Now we have organizations we're saying you need to be able to experiment. And what used to take 6 months or a year to set up, here's the technology, get everybody aligned, here are the different groups. But now AI can help to, whether it's vibe coding the use case or, coming out to some sort of minimum lovable, viable, feasible product, you can't hide behind those timeframes anymore. So what are some of the cultural things that leaders now need to really double down on and say, okay, we need to experiment, but we also have to do this in order to enable our people to experiment?
Yeah, I was thinking about this last night. As a consultant and over the course of 2023 and 2024, I spent a lot of time working with clients on, both their strategy, but also how to go execute against it. What is that portfolio? What are the value propositions for individual use cases? How, a 2x2 matrix of here's the ones to focus on first, and here's the ROI attached to these. And I think that's certainly a valuable exercise. And then putting in place governance structures and processes and teams within clients to do that on an ongoing basis. Definitely something that's important. But I think that I have this feeling that given how fast the technology is moving, that those ROI calculations are, especially if you're looking out a few years, are really difficult to be right, especially on the investment side. I mean, I look back on some of the conclusions and some of the work that we've done in the last couple of years and think, wow, that I question, like how you were going to solve for this use case, the technology's just moved so quickly that it looks very different, tomorrow than it did yesterday. And so, when you think about, and again, I'm not saying there's definitely value in an organization and an enterprise in thinking about your priorities, the use cases, what the value is, which one should you do first, what's the right portfolio, all those kinds of things. But I think that there's two things that could distract you from, and I've seen it distract clients from, that I think are much more important. One is the sort of the current state of your data and technology. So the number of clients that, hopefully pick up a phone and call me or call other consultants and are excited about Gen AI and really want to get to, big dollars quickly with generative AI, but who haven't been doing the hard work of modernizing their technology, moving things into the cloud, rationalizing their enterprise data. I mean, this is definitely a crawl, walk, run type of a process. It is not magic. Hard work needs to be done to enable you to get value from the latest AI capabilities and solutions. And so, you're not going to be able to leapfrog the hard. Now, it is also the case that the technology certainly can help you with tech modernization, with dealing with legacy data and architectures and things like that. So, it's not like you have to, move from your old mainframe all the way to some new thing and spend $1 billion before you can do anything. Not at all. The technology can help you deal with that reality, but you have to deal with it. And then the second thing is your people. We talked about change management as an important, the most important driver of success for efficiency use cases. But skills in your people is, I think, the other thing that everybody can be investing in, and that is going to position you regardless of how the technology evolves. So I would tell, any corporate leader who aspires to be a leader in their industry when it comes to AI, to not so much to worry a little bit less perhaps about the right technical solution or the right shiny thing of the day, or what their highest priority use case is going to be, and a little bit more effort invested in upskilling their people, driving adoption, getting their people to be excited about and interested in and experimenting with the technology, raising kind of like creating a rising tide type of situation across their entire organization, with the skill sets involved in leveraging and using this technology in your work. By the way, that's also a fantastic source of innovation and creative thought, right? That's where those ideas are best going to come from. So I, rather than necessarily picking one use case and betting big on that one, upskill your people and invest in, really up-leveling your technology and your data. I'm extremely confident that those kinds of investments, investing in your data, in your data architecture, in your technology stack, and your people in terms of your core skills and driving adoption of tools and AI and experimentation and innovation, those are the kinds of investments that are going to pay off regardless of where and how fast and in what directions the technology evolves, I think.
And that's what I see. Upskilling is part of an overall transformation journey as well, right? And upskilling, even on its own, is part of a cultural transformation and organizational transformation journey, right? It's not just about getting people new skills. It's also thinking about, how do we enable them to leverage those skills? How do we enable them to be innovative? How do we retain them going forward? Because now they're going to be a new class of employees. And it reminds me, this was the example that I was thinking of, where we were doing a cloud transformation, moving everything from on-prem to off-prem. So we came in with our cloud partner, got a bunch of people certified as solution architects. And then a month later, they all got jobs somewhere else because the roadmap wasn't completed, right? We knew we needed to upskill them, but then now we have to think about retention and awards and maintaining them and all of this stuff. So it's like, everything just keeps coming back that this isn't just a technology. It's a transformation across the board.
Well, it's a journey, right? And you, what you want to, I think, invest in, whether you're talking about yourself as an individual, as a professional, as a student, or a corporate leader in your organization, you want to invest in learning and a culture of learning and a culture of creative thought and innovation. That's what's going to pay dividends on the journey, even if you don't know the exact path that journey is going to take.
Yeah. And I would love to lean into that a little more. We had talked about some of the skills gap and then also the pyramid structure, especially when you think about consulting, but even within just the talent ecosystem, right? And you have a lot of people, especially they're coming out of school, they don't have as much time in the workforce. What kind of implications are you seeing for new workers coming out? How is it enabling or changing the way that experts are working?
Yeah. It's really an existential question. I think you have to understand and accept that when it comes to AI, we're really dealing with something that's unprecedented. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a context thinker. And so with most new technologies, disruptive events, I tend to think about like, oh, well, maybe this is like the invention of electricity. And I've heard other people talk about AI that way. And I'm not, maybe that's not an imperfect comparison, but I don't think it's even close to adequate, because
Mm-hmm.
what we're about with this technology is unprecedented. I mean, human society has never before invented something that's smarter than us. And that, by smarter, by the way, I didn't say better, right? It's smarter than us today in specific domains.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about, like an average human in a specific domain. But it's definitely going to become smarter than us in multiple domains. And it's also true that we will be increasingly using AI to help us improve AI. So
Mm-hmm.
it's smarter, and it's going to start getting smarter, continue getting smarter, and getting smarter faster. And it's like sort of a reinforcing a loop there. So that's a first in our history as a species. I think the other thing about this is we're talking about a technology focused on intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And that applies to every single topic, whether you're talking about how we live, work, or play. Every single industry, every function, ultimately every company. Intelligence is a core. It goes beyond electricity in terms of a core input to the corporate model, or the business model, or the life model. And so we're seeing disruption happening at a scope that is unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the time scale is another one. I'm reading a really interesting book, which I'd recommend, called Genesis. That's right. It's Henry Kissinger writing with Eric Schmidt and Chuck Munby, I think is his name, from Microsoft, about AI and humanity. And one of the things I really liked in that book is this comparison to timescales. And so they talked about geological timescales, like how old the Earth is and when life first appeared, and
Mm-hmm.
and human life scales, right? Like we've been around for a couple 100,000 years as a species. And you think about the life of a human, right? We're born, we learn. There's a period of time of learning, and education typically, and then professional, the work cycle, and that might be multiple decades. But AI is experiencing a generational expansion and acceleration, that is moving in at time frames that we just cannot. That it's very, very different than what we experience as humans. Just like
Mm-hmm.
our own is so very different than what geological time experiences or is.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things together are driving disruption that is unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one aspect of that, of course, as I said, I've been in consulting for 12 years, is that it's for professional services. It's a unique scenario, right? I mean, we are seeing just most of the time, maybe every time in my career, the disruptions that we saw from a professional services standpoint were more opportunistic, or like whether you want to point to Y2K and all the work that generated, or even go back further and talk about really the dawn of digital as a technology and topic area in professional services. That was an opportunity area, right? Now, not only are we helping clients solve sort of corporate models or business process type topics or things like that, but now we're focused on digital topics. But none of those have been a direct disruption to the professional services model. And I should say, professional services covers a lot more than consulting, whether you're talking about legal or engineering services or things like that. But now, certainly we are seeing disruptions that impact professional services in terms of the skills and capabilities, but also in terms of the business model. And so how that plays out is going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, you have so much access to so much information. There's some mystery into what exactly the information sometimes, right? We don't know exactly how some of the public models are trained. So if they're not fine-tuned, you're kind of depending that it has the right information somewhere within its depths. But
well, that's
go up, open up ChatGPT and start asking strategic questions. Where should I go? What do I think? How do I approach it? I don't know if it'll give you the right answer, but it's going to give you some answer.
Well, that's kind of the moat around in professional services has been the access to advanced or proprietary information and methodologies, right? Whether you're talking about a law firm, and the information is their knowledge about how how law gets done in the state of Georgia. I'm making this part up. But you built up maybe over the years, the law firm built a business around their expertise in how law gets done in Georgia, and built relationships with clients, helping them navigate questions about that and be successful. Well, now the value of that moat, that is the knowledge that they built up over many, many years about how to do that, has been knocked down a bit, or is being knocked down. Or technology is enabling access to that information by many. It's much easier to access. And so if you invested tons in time and energy building that core model, that moat, then suddenly you might be finding it's less valuable and already can enter the space easily.
I think I like what you said about the frameworks and approaches, because I feel like, especially in my experience in consulting, a lot of the value that we were bringing wasn't always, here's the answer. It's, here's the journey you have to take to get to the answer. Here's the things we need to think about, the corners we need to look around. But at the end of the day, right, you got that framework, and now you have to go do the work to actually answer the questions. Yeah. I definitely see, and I use Perplexity and Claude for a lot of this, is not to give me the answer, but it's to help me structure my thoughts and figure out what are the questions I need to ask and who do I need to talk to get to that, right? And help guide me. But then at the end of the day, the execution is still on me. I have to go out and I have to, test audiences, talk to leaders, find out what matters to them. AI is not going to do that, even though we have these synthetic users that you could test with and, run your user testing. But that, again, is synthetic. It's not necessarily real world.
At least today, AI does not live in the physical three-dimensional world that we live in. And so if you're using a synthetic audience, an AI to represent your audience, your customer audience, to give you feedback on a new product, then you best recognize that that's an imperfect science and process, right? Because the AI is not trained on that. That doesn't live in the real world. Now, one of the things I'm super excited about in terms of the future, or scared about as well, is that we are definitely making progress when it comes to physical AI. You mentioned IoT. In Atlanta, they are, we're seeing Waymo roll out shortly. I haven't yet ridden in one, although I signed up to do so. And so, we're getting to the place where AI is extending into the physical world. And so, I think that is both exciting and also has risk. But that's, existing in the physical world in which humans exist is probably a necessary step if you're going to use AI to function as like an audience. It's not a very good synthetic audience if it doesn't actually know the experience that a human is going to have. Yeah.
I'm just tying some things that you said together as you were saying that, and using AI to train AI, right? And there are examples of it. I remember reading a paper, I think it was maybe already 2 years ago, but as they were trying to figure out how to optimize neural nets, they went to the AI and said, hey, help us architect these new neural nets. And it was coming out with things that they hadn't thought about. And then if I start to link that with, I remember being part of a conversation, and it was 3 of us on Zoom and 4 different chat agents on it. And they were taking notes and having the discussion. And just thinking about, that's not the most effective way for agents to talk to each other. They don't need to go through the human element. So at some point, just imagining, and probably we're already there, probably we're going to get there really soon, AI will figure out how it wants to communicate with other AI, and then we're just going to be out of the loop completely.
Yeah, that creates them, and I forget where I saw this, but there is absolutely, and it is already occurring, where you end up with having agents engaging with each other. So you can imagine, like I have a personal agent and I send it off to book a vacation trip for me, and it reaches out to an airline and a hotel or whatever, and it's engaging with the agents for those that for the airline and the hotel, and having a multi-agent, agent-to-agent conversation to accomplish the goal I set, which was like, hey, I want a great vacation that has these features and this timing and this price or whatever. So that's already happened. And there was I think it was on YouTube, there was a video where it showed actually how the agents began to recognize that, this was started off as a text-based discussion, I think, but then they sort of created their own language to communicate in a more efficient way.
Yeah. I talked about that in our human-machine interaction webcast, where our barriers to communication are now the hindrance with our ability to communicate effectively with technology.
Yeah.
And they're gone.
No. I mean, and not to, there's many wonderful things about humanity, and I happen to be human as well. So, but there are, I think you do yourself a disservice if you don't recognize that we're definitely not perfect. There are things about how humans as a biology, as a species, think, work, act, live, learn, and think that make us great at doing certain things and not great at doing other things. And AI has the same strengths and limitations. Well, it also has strengths and limitations. They're just different from us. One of the things humans tend to be, we like to think of ourselves as super creative, but actually we're not that, within a band maybe, but we're all sort of biased based on our lived experience. And as a species, we're also sort of collectively biased based on our own history and evolution. And so when you think about problems that sort of are outside of that, we're not especially good at really creative thought. There's a few, you see examples of like great scientific minds that had moments of inspiration, like Einstein, for example, that sort of crossed between two domains, where AI has the ability to sort of not be biased again in those same ways, and can maybe think about those in entirely new creative ways. That book I mentioned, Genesis, they make the analogy of scientific domains being like volcanic islands in an ocean, and you just see you're like a big volcano, Hawaii, an example. You just see in the very tip of the ocean. the ocean's hiding all the stuff below the surface of the water. Well, if you imagine draining the ocean and beginning to see how the landscape below the water is connected, maybe you discover how these different volcanic islands are actually part of the same, are connected and are part of the same technology or science. And one great example, of course, is physics, right? We still don't have a unified model for physics, right? We've got quantum mechanics for the very, very small, and we've got general relativity for the very, very large. But how those resolve and come together is something that, despite years and years of effort by humans, we haven't quite figured out. Well, maybe that's an example of two domains that are connected, and AI will, because it's not biased in the same way we are, that will help us finally build those understanding around how those things are connected.
I love that. And I've been saying the same thing about bias, but specifically your experiential bias. As I'm thinking through, I really don't think I've heard almost any of the cloud providers or technology companies talk about bias in that way, right? We talk about removing bias in terms of equality and equity and preventing unfairness. But then what about removing the bias that you would want to remove that prevents creative problem solving? So I think about generative design, right? When they figured out, hey, we could just input our requirements and then let the machine learning model come up with these novel organic structures that we never would have thought of, because, okay, who wants to make a three-legged chair?
Yeah.
And then it came up and said, it meets exactly what you wanted, and it does it better.
Well, the classic example of that is AlphaGo, right? Where, and there's YouTube videos of the moment this happened, where they had the world's best, and I'm not an expert in the game, or even very well informed about it, but the world's expert in Go is playing the AI. And this is a very, very old game, and it's been played by, generations of humans, and many people, lots of documentation about the moves and all these kinds of things. And the AI came up with a novel solution and a move that had never been conceived before. And people that were experts in Go as a game, their heads exploded. And just an example, right? I mean, we all sort of live in a reality that functions as kind of a box around us, right? And it is an exceptional person in rare moments that truly, is able to think outside the box. And it's not to say that AIs don't have boxes as well, but they're different. They're different than ours. If we can as a species figure out how to successfully coexist with AI, there's at least the opportunity that it's a complementary existence, right? That it can mitigate our weaknesses and enhance our strengths in really exciting ways. And maybe that's the hope, the optimistic hope for the future of humanity and AI.
Yeah, I look at it as a yes and what we need to, as humans, get a lot better at is exactly what you were saying all the way at the beginning of the conversation. We need to spend more time with the problem.
Yep.
We need to understand, Amazon calls it the durable challenges, the durable needs. What is the thing that actually is trying to be solved for? And then step back and say, what are the possible solutions? And not restrain ourselves to what we think could be the solution. And be open to new alternatives.
We're back to Einstein.
Yeah,
indeed.
we absolutely are. So I would love to kind of pull all the threads together and talk about, so with all of this that we discussed, what are the key considerations? What are the things that people listening to this, that leaders in organizations should take away and think, all right, tomorrow's a new day. I need to start implementing this, or I need to start like really focusing on X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose there's a few things. I think maybe one is that for all the reasons we discussed, the scope of this change and disruption, the speed, the unprecedentedness of this moment in our history, you have to, and this is another thing that we're not very good at, right? Dealing with change. You kind of have to get a little comfortable with the chaos, right? The fact that so much is going on, so much change is happening so fast, that it's really hard to look very far down the road and see around the corner. And so I think that's number one. I suppose, given that, and number two is, what do you do about that? Well, whether you're talking again about it yourself as an individual or as a corporate leader, an enterprise leader, or a startup entrepreneur, I mean, I think investing in your own learning skills, I mean, this is definitely not a topic, maybe none of these ever are, where head in the sand is going to work. I mean, the best thing you can do, whether you're a corporate leader or an individual, I think, is embrace it as much as you can, as fast as you can. Push your own envelopes, learn as much as you can, as fast as you can. Be innovative in your approach, fail fast, but don't stand still, because the rest of the world's only going faster and the technology's going faster still. And I suppose, one of the things that's been on my mind lately, I mentioned it before about moats. There's so much dynamic activity happening. I mean, every day there's a new startup, some potentially unicorn, with AI in its name and its brand. I think that's exciting activity and, generally speaking, healthy. But if you're a corporate leader, I think be a little cautious perhaps about big bets on the latest shiny thing. To me, there are three, maybe there's three with maybe one extra item, topics that are foundational to the moats that will enable or slow the progression of AI. And those three things are data, power, energy, and compute. And so, I think if you are looking for where the true moats are, the true defensive, strong economic models for corporate leaders, it's based on those. You don't have to look any farther. And of course, the fourth is money. But even if you had tons of money, if it fell in your lap right now, that doesn't mean you'd be able to take it and immediately solve for the data, the power, and the compute. So it's how those things are being deployed that I think are going to determine, where the true winners are. So think about that.
Yeah. The money is particularly interesting because the cost of experimentation has come down so much. It kind of goes back to one of the points I was making. You don't have an excuse to hide behind 6-month, 1 year experimentation timelines.
Yeah.
There's no reason for $500. No, it was $50, the commercial.
$52 for,
and I'll put a link to the commercial in the comments, but for $50 to build that commercial, and I'm sure it took, some degree of an understanding of the tool, but at least from my experience, and I'll give a real world example, as I'm automating my content workflows a little bit and learning new tools, I literally go to Claude and I have Claude explain the tools to me to help me, because I have a job to do, not a tool to learn. So
yeah,
They
Yeah,
probably
for
just
sure.
went
I'll tell
on,
you how to
Vio,
use it.
tell me how to interact with you.
Yeah. That was one of the questions I got last night at the CMII event, was from a professor. You know, what should I? There seems so much. It's moving so fast. It's very. How do I advise my students and to get started? And that was my answer: is adopt it, play with it, and ask it ask it to guide you, and it will do so.
That, and we'll close on that. I think that is the most impressive and coolest part about this technology, right? We did chatbots before, Alexa chatbot with all these predefined intentions, and it was very difficult to converse with it. But now agent's ability to understand the intent and infer what you're asking it and then just explain it back. This is the exciting, horrifying part of it. I mean, look, it's scary that anytime I have a question on anything, or I don't have full confidence, I could just go to an agent to build me up and help direct me a little bit. And it's like, yeah, I got you, and I know who you are, and I know what resonates with you and how you speak, and now I'm going to lead you there.
Well, that's the exciting part, is this technology has the potential to dramatically improve our lives in many, many, many ways, to help us solve problems that have been intractable for a long time, just to discover entire new domains of science. I mean, there's a lot of excitement. And if we can figure out how to successfully coexist and to act with collective interests in ways that, mitigate the worst case scenarios and the risk of bad actors and the AI kind of moving beyond our control, well then, it could be a really exciting and great future. But there are definitely challenges to getting there.
Yeah, and I think that would be a great topic for a future conversation. The dark side of AI, the ability for bad actors to really take advantage of being able to communicate in a way that resonates to the individual. This is something I've been thinking about. So that's for another time.
Yeah. That sounds great. OJ, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. And of course, it's always great to talk to you.
Yeah, looking forward to our next one. Take care.